Hello and welcome to the African Regional Conference 2016. I'm James King, the Banker's Africa and Middle East editor, and I'm joined now by Thierry Chilosi, who heads up Markets and Initiatives at SWIFT. Thierry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, James. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, Thierry, we're about halfway through this year's conference. And obviously you've had a chance to talk with a number of delegates, you've hosted a few panels yourself. What have been the key sort of conversations and discussions that you've heard this year?
Yes, there's a couple of themes that keep returning in during the conference. So we had on Monday our African Advisory Group. We have the main conference sessions and obviously a lot of interaction in this vibrant conference. So also the opportunity to talk to delegates, central bankers like commercial banks. And three key themes come back very often. The first one is around the importance of intra-African trade, how this is growing, how there's a lot of willingness to keep increasing the amount of intra-Africa trade. The second one is around payments innovation, and we hear a lot of talks about the mobile evolution here in Africa, which is really taking a large amount of space. And the third theme is around financial inclusion. Financial inclusion from the perspective of bankerizing more and more of the African population, but also around the financial crime compliance challenges that this poses. So these are the three themes that I hear the most of.
And from these topics, can you draw some sort of key conclusions and outcomes from those discussions?
Yes, very, very interesting. And we had also an opportunity there to present the SWIFT statistics, the latest reports on the African payment flows. So what we have done is we have analyzed cross-border payments over the SWIFT network between the year 2013 all the way to 2015. And there's some interesting conclusions which were a bit material for discussion. On the good side, African payments are growing. So the number of payments sent cross-border is growing at a rate of about 10% comprehensively, fueled by two things: domestic payment growth and intra-regional payment growth. And this is thanks to the very long-term investment done by the African communities to invest into regional payment systems, such as in SADC, in WAMSI, and in Eastern Africa as well. So that's a good side of the story. On the flip side, there's an area of attention point is that the amount of transaction going outside of Africa, so to the rest of the world, is decreasing, or has decreased at a rate of 5%. And when we double click on that data to look a bit more what's behind it, we certainly see a currency shift. So we see the usage of the US dollar dropping by about 3 percentage points. We see on the flip side the euro usage and the usage, most importantly, of African currencies, such as the South African rand, growing. So that's a good sign of integration. But we have to balance that with the challenge of what we hear a lot about, which is the de-risking. So looking at the data more carefully, you also see that African banks have fewer and fewer correspondents. And in some of the countries, as few as -10%, -20%. And this is a big area of discussion, obviously, of debate, and it's the theme that we know as the de-risking here at play.
So from that data, you are seeing some fairly significant challenges emerging for Africa. And I guess the question there is, how do you move forward and how do you address those?
And that's what a conference like this is interesting for, because we don't have the final solution to this challenge, but we've been discussing it. Mm-hmm. And a few elements, if we will, of how to address the de-risking challenge are coming out. The most common ones are threefold. First of all, if the discussion we have on the panels and with delegates, there's the need to better control the risk. So for the African financial institutions to demonstrate that they control the compliance risk well, and to show that to the international community. The second topic is around transparency. So the need to proactively now share with their counterparties information necessary for these counterparties to feel that they're operating within their risk appetite zone. And the third one, which is probably the biggest change, because this is a trend that we've seen going, is the need to communicate. To communicate no longer independently, as used to be in the past, each bank reacting with its own business development objective, but rather at a community level. And this is probably, if I were to draw a conclusion of what we see in this conference, is really this need from commercial banks, from central banks, from regulators, to tackle the problem together. And that's been very interesting to discuss this.
Okay, well, we've still got a few days left of the conference to go, so hopefully we can hear more about that as we progress. And Thierry, thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you, James. A pleasure.
Cheers.